Hello and welcome to Hawksong Weaving. I'm a disabled, chronically ill weaver, and today I'm weaving a wool and cotton scarf, talking about weaving with mixed fiber warp types and how to deal with stress when facing different factors of the process being wonky while weaving. I hope you enjoy. Life takes odd turns, but even tattered and worn yarn still has value. Tired joints and health flares don't have to stop the journey. Welcome to Hawksong Weaving, where all our paths are a little bit warped. Because I work with thrift store or secondhand yarn, I don't plan weavings far in advance. Instead, I work with what I have. Sometimes a project starts with knowing what yarn warp I'm going to be using, other times, like this one, where I know what weft yarn I'm going to be using, and picking out the warp follows afterwards. In this case, I almost immediately realized that I have my loom at a bit of an angle, it's not fully square, and that I started my warp measuring tension way too tight. This is very much a situation of do as I say, not as I do. I do recommend, especially if you catch it this early, just restarting it. But if you're feeling stubborn like I was, use your body and brace against the loom for the rest of the warp. This was a calculated risk based on what I know about the tension and tensile strength of the warp threads that I'm using. For a beginner weaver, please start over at this point. For my partners who are watching this, I know I'm being a hypocrite. Hush. Since I know that the dark brown wool has more give to its tension and has a few weaker spots, I'm using a lighter brown cotton wool blend on the other side of the warp. I'm making this decision knowing that the weft yarn I'm using is 100% wool, specifically a looser spun wool, and that when I block it, it will both tighten up and soften beautifully. With the warp thread sorted, I'm lifting up the loom to release the warping board from the loom, gathering the warp threads into one large bundle and, honestly, using the back of my neck to drape them over and keep them tidy and out of the way, while I collapse the warping board and get it tucked out of the way until I'm at a full pause point where I can get it unclamped from my desk and put away. I use terry cloth towels to cushion the warp threads. This helps prevent the finished weaving from being tighter at the ends and looser in the middle, creating a sort of sausage profile in the weaving. The way I warp has me cutting the warp loops at the end of winding the warp. This is what's easiest on my body, but it won't work for everyone, and that's okay. This isn't a great angle, but I'm being careful to pay attention to how the warp threads are laying on the back bar of the loom, and the right hand thread goes through the smaller hole in the rigid heddle reed. It's not critical, and some minor mistakes aren't the end of the world, but it does make it easier to keep the tension of the warp threads even across the entire weaving. I want to say thank you for sticking around this long. If you'd like to support my work, please feel free to subscribe or follow. Links to other social media can be found in my bio. This is a great way to support smaller artists that's absolutely free, but it lets the algorithms know that this is content that people would like to see. Also, by request, I also now have a Buy Me a Coffee available as well, if you feel up to supporting my work financially. Again, the link is below. There is absolutely no pressure. Everyone is on a budget these days. Take care of yourself and your loved ones first. For the most part, this weaving is going normally. I am noting that the weft is clinging to the different fiber types of warp differently, but because I'm going to be doing a full steam block of this scarf, I'm not concerned. There was a bit where the warp threads were less tightly spun. I was super careful there. Ideally, this thread would be going through the full gap in the rigid heddle, but because it's in the reed, I'm being as careful as I can to ensure that the reed isn't fraying the warp thread further. This can be fairly nerve-wracking because I hate tying warp threads together. But I got through it. Until filming this, I didn't realize that I bite my lip and make funny faces when the yarn isn't cooperating. Well, you live and you loom. That pun doesn't work. Oh well. Once this bit is done, I stopped and breathed for just a few minutes, calming down my heart rate. Making myself be gentle with the fibers is a great way for making me be gentle with my own fibers, yay collagen genetic disorders, but it does take time and it can be stressful. Now tying off the scarf fringes, I prefer to do 2x2 tied into a fringe of 4, but if I'm short on warp threads, I'll do a double sliding knot of 3. It's super dry today, so I put on some lotion to lessen the static and give my hand some better grip for tying. Blocking this was so satisfying. I knew how the wool warp and weft was going to react, but seeing the fibers almost jump into each other was fantastic. That's the end of the video. I'm so glad for the odd turn your life took that got you here. Thanks for spending some time with Hawksong Weaving, where we're all a bit warped. And I hope that you guys have an excellent week.